Good evening everyone, Mike Palmer from Know Your Rights Group and Success Coaching International with another live video update tonight. Now, don't be concerned by the title. I know some of you are probably thinking, oh, this is really only for Victorians and Melburnians, but as I'm going to explain in a moment, this video tonight most assuredly applies to all Australians. And I'll explain to you why. Now, of course, Victorians and in particular Melburnians are being affected considerably more than those in some other states, but it is still definitely a national issue. Now, for example, most of the rest of Australia has established a COVID normal, if you like, but that is still very far from proper normal. Okay, Queensland, for example, which relies very, very heavily on the tourism industry, is still suffering incredibly due to those closed borders. And given that the vast number of their tourists come from Victoria and, of course, in particular in Melbourne, Queenslanders are still in the dark just as much as Victorians and Melburnians are as to when their lives are going to actually return to proper normal. Now, unfortunately, with the borders still closed, most people don't know enough about their rights to be able to quote the relevant sections of legislation, as Darren and Daryl explained on Tuesday night's show. Obviously, a lot of other people just not in a position to be able to wait out the mandatory quarantine time, so they're not able to escape their states and experience that true form of normal, and that could in reality still be quite some time off for many Australians. Now, for Melburnians though, it really is so far away from even the COVID normal that people in the other states are currently enjoying, and it truly is heartbreaking. And the whole point is it's absolutely unnecessary. There's just no need for it. Okay, Dan Andrews got everybody's hopes up just a couple of weeks ago, promising to ease things and go to stage 3, and of course he did none of that today. All he did was extended the 5-kilometre travel radius to 25 kilometres. He allowed a few more people to gather, but made it clear people weren't going to be allowed to gather for the AFL Grand Final or anything like that. But the only significant change was that hairdressers are now allowed to open, which I'm very, very excited about. But seriously, okay, if hairdressers are allowed to open, why can't other businesses, where there's going to be more social distancing, there's going to be more distance between the staff and the customers than you would find in a hairdressing salon? It just makes no sense. Now, unfortunately, according to Dan the man who must be obeyed, most businesses are still not allowed to open up tomorrow. But as I explained on Thursday night's video, I'm hearing from a growing number of people that they are going to do just that anyway. Okay, now I'm not condoning it in any way, I'm just simply reporting to you what I've been hearing. Now, the obvious question that comes to my mind at least is, if masks and social distancing work, okay, if COVID safe plans work, okay, as they have been in every other state, what the hell is the problem with us opening up here in Victoria? Okay, there is simply no medical justification for these continued restrictions. Okay, and let's not forget that the number of cases and in fact the number of deaths is actually less in Victoria today than it is even in somewhere like New South Wales. Okay, so we've got to keep things in perspective. Now again, I would never suggest that anybody breaks the law, but you need to establish for yourself whether these directions are in fact laws, which is something that the High Court's about to determine for everybody shortly, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay, and B, you need to figure out for yourself, have you or your business been specifically mentioned in a public health order that notes COVID-19 as a quarantinable offence? Because if not, as I've explained on numerous of these videos over the last couple of months, then those directions, those directives do not apply to you and your business. Okay, please don't take my word for it. Don't believe anything I say. Go and do this research for yourselves. Again, I've covered it at length in detail on these recent video updates. Just go and look up the legislation and actually read it. Okay, if you've missed some of those videos, please just go to our YouTube channel or our BitChute channel, okay, and you'll find all of those videos apart from the couple that YouTube deleted. you'll find them all there. My suggestion is that Dan Andrews is going to wait till much closer till the 6th of November before he really eases any restrictions, and that of course is when the High Court could potentially rule that they're all invalid anyway. Again, look what happened with the curfew case. As soon as they went into court, the lady that had the cafe down on the Mornington Peninsula, as soon as she lodged papers with the court to say, no, these curfews are illegal, they're unlawful, lo and behold, very soon after, Dan Andrews removed the curfews. And this is my suggestion of what he's going to do with the rest of these restrictions. And again, go back and look at the videos. I told everybody, unfortunately, he won't be lifting this 5 kilometre. He might extend it to 10 or so, or it was 25. I said that the businesses wouldn't open. They're not allowed to open. We can see the pattern of what he's doing. He doesn't do anything unless he's absolutely forced to. Now, we, the people, collectively have the power to force his hand, but of course also the courts have the power to force his hand. So again, this comes straight out of ABC News. That's the article. I urge you to go and look it up for yourselves. Challenge to Victoria's tough coronavirus lockdown reaches High Court. The Victorian government has been given until Tuesday afternoon, that's this coming Tuesday, 2 days' time, to decide how it will respond to a High Court challenge to the state's lockdown restrictions. Mornington Peninsula hotelier Julian Gurner argues the stage 4 lockdown measures are unnecessary and disproportionate, which of course they are. Mr. Gurner is suffering the ongoing adverse effects upon his mental health of having his movement restricted, which in his circumstances amounts effectively to a state of confinement, the court document said. At a fast-track directions hearing at the High Court in Sydney on Friday, Justice Virginia Bell was told the state of Victoria was still considering whether it would file a defence, a demurrer, or both. Justice Bell said if the state chose to demur, the matter could be listed before the full court as early as November 6th. And lo and behold, what's Dan Andrews come out and said, oh, look, we'll try and lift things on November the 1st. Remember, he said that before and gone back on his word. So it's going to be most likely somewhere around that date. As soon as the court's ready to make some sort of ruling, his hand's going to be forced, and that's when he'll do it. Mr. Gurner's legal team has asked the High Court to consider key questions around the Constitution and residents' implied freedom of movement within the state. There is no implied freedom. It is categorically stated. Section 92 of the Commonwealth Constitution, go and read it. You have the right to travel freely among the states. Okay, go and read that section for yourself. The main question is whether the Victorian lockdown directions are invalid because they impermissibly burden that implied freedom, and if not in whole, to what extent they are invalid. Now again, remember, although this is in relation to the Victorian restrictions, there's still certain other restrictions on movement in many other states. Okay, across the borders, for example. So this High Court ruling, will have implications to people in other states as well. The determination of the lawfulness of the restrictions on movement imposed upon the 6.6 million Australians currently residing in Victoria is urgent, the court document said. Mr. Gurner argued the mental health effects had been worsened by his inability to trade at the beginning of what would usually be his business's most profitable period, impacting its viability. Now, it's not just his business that we're coming into the most profitable period, it's most businesses. Okay, grand final time, people want to do themselves up. Spring racing, time in Victoria, people want to do themselves up. People start getting ready for Christmas and, decking out their holiday houses, all those sort of things. This is having an effect on all Melbourneian businesses. The submissions also quoted David Nabarro of the World Health Organisation, who said the body did not advocate lockdowns as the primary means of virus control, which I've covered on previous updates. Okay, so please go and read that article for yourself. But there is simply no medical evidence that restricting people to a 5 kilometre radius or now to a 25 kilometre radius is going to have any positive impact on the health of Australians. And again, I want to make this clear. The death toll attributed to COVID-19, specifically here in Melbourne, has dropped significantly. So why have we still got any of these restrictions in place? Okay, that death toll is the only figure people should be worried about, not who's got a flu or a cold or a sniffle or a snuffle or something else. It's completely irrelevant. Okay, all the other states have been able to open up completely. Okay, people on the whole, from what I've heard, are walking around, they're working without masks. So why on earth can we not be doing exactly the same here in Victoria? Okay, we need to keep things in perspective. We need to have context. Now, speaking of figures and speaking of context, there's been this insane post doing the rounds on Facebook. I've seen it on Facebook. There's another one. This is the one relating to France. There's another one relating to the UK, and people just don't get it. And this is the big point they're trying to make. July 27th, France had 514 cases of COVID-19, and on the same date, Victoria had 532. On October 16, France had 25,086 cases. October 16, Victoria had just 2, and today we had just 1. Like it, hate it, pick a side, whatever suits you. Undeniable that this has worked. With costs, yes, but the alternative. How do people not understand? On July 27th, here in Victoria, we were in the middle of winter. Okay? We were in the peak of the flu season. Remember that thing that nobody died of in Victoria at all this year? The flu? Because they were all magically saved. No, because they were all written down as COVID-related deaths. Okay? That's why we had those numbers, in addition, of course, to Daniel Andrews' complete incompetence. All right? In France, okay, they were in the middle of summer. Okay? So that's why those numbers. Now, of course, you go to October, and here we are in Victoria heading into the warmer weather, okay? And we're heading into our summer. We're well past the traditional flu season. And what's happening in France or in the UK, where they quote these ridiculous numbers? They are heading into winter, and they're heading into their traditional flu season. That's why those numbers are being reported. Please don't for a minute buy into the media brainwashing and everything else that this has got anything to do with some success story of Dan's restrictions and lockdowns. They are completely and utterly irrelevant. Okay, I've literally lost track of the number of times I've seen that post and pointed out these facts, and people are like, oh yeah. Okay, now I do want to finish off tonight by reading out another post. It is a little bit longer. It's been doing the rounds, but it does make a lot more sense. Now, it's purportedly from a barrister. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but it really doesn't matter because the points remain the same. So I'm going to read this out just quickly. It says, know this, lockdown orders have zero legal standing. Why did Daniel Andrews desperately want the omnibus detention powers? Remember, we spoke about that a week or so back. He had the existing fines mechanism already to enforce directions orders, which are the basis of the lockdown. So why the need for new powers? The answer is because people are waking up. Everyone should go and read page 106 of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, Division 1, Section 111. It states, the spread of an infectious disease should be prevented or minimised with the minimum restrictions on the rights of any persons. Has that been happening? No. Why? The clause doesn't say the restrictions on the rights of any person will be minimum to contain the spread of an infectious disease. If the clause's construction read this way, it would attempt to give the chief health officer arbitrary power to decide what's minimum to get his job done as he sees fit, and no consideration or reference to what the person whose rights being restricted thinks. But this is not how the law works or what the clause says. The legal drafting and clause construction is very clear. It says the chief health officer can do his job to stop the spread of infectious disease, but a person's rights restrictions must be minimal. He has a qualifier and restraint. He doesn't decide what's minimum. So who does decide what's minimum? If the person whose rights are being restricted has no say in the matter, there would have been no need to include that clause in the legislation. The Parliament sought to preserve and protect civil liberties. It's a check on unfettered powers. That is the purpose of the clause. Otherwise, why have it in the legislation if the Chief Health Officer has unrestrained powers? It's a reminder and constraint on the Chief Health Officer. The Westminster system constrains, separates, checks and contains power through a mechanism known as the separation of powers. This means that the legislator, who makes laws, the executive, which is the Premier and Ministry, who execute law, and the judiciary, who interpret the laws, remain separate. This is a check on power, so it's not concentrated as we've seen in Victoria at present. The default mind of Parliament in a liberal democracy is to preserve freedoms, particularly the freedom of movement and association, which the High Court has protected over and over, and now Daniel Andrews thinks he can extinguish. The person who decides what's a minimum restraint on a person's right is the person who has the rights. If that person has no say on what's a restraint, that person would be deemed to have no rights, so why even mention them? In this event, the person at best has privileges which can be limited or extinguished, like a driving licence. True rights can only be suspended or limited by the rights holder. These are known as inalienable rights, God-given, which cannot be extinguished by the state, the Chief Health Officer or Daniel Andrews. Division 1, Section 111 was drafted in acknowledgement of this liberal democratic principle. The section is even referred to as the principle of the Act, against which all directions orders must be measured, case closed. What I've just set out is legal argument by a barrister that he might make before a magistrate who is usually ill-equipped to handle such arguments. Now you understand why the last thing Daniel Andrews wants is fines to be challenged in court. Push the problem into the future, maybe even forgive fines so they never see a courtroom. Victorians don't know or understand the law, and Andrews feels omnipotent, while Victorians are oblivious and kept in the dark. The average police member in the street is even less well equipped to handle this matter, so don't even try to enlighten them or argue while being issued with an illegal and worthless fine. They have no idea, they're just following orders. In any event, fines are only allegations and not findings of fact or guilt. This is what we keep saying again and again and again. I said it just on Thursday night's video. Section 8, subsection 12, Imperial Acts Application Act. Fines become an admission of guilt when you pay them, so stop paying them. That's why fines can be challenged. Daniel Andrews' decrees from the podium have zero standing and will never stand up in court when the BS fines are challenged. They're all a big bluff. The lockdown is a bluff. It's no wonder the Magistrates Court has adjourned all COVID challenge fines well into 2021. If one illegal fine gets before a court, Andrews will buckle like he did with the curfew when it was uncovered as a fraud. The directions order will also be found as illegal as the curfew. The day before the curfew was challenged in the Supreme Court, it was quickly ended by Andrews. The 5-kilometre restraint is equally illegal as an excessive restraint on the rights of Victorians. I remind you, if Victorians have no rights, as Andrews asserts, then why mention them in the Act? While Andrews can't be removed as Premier, he is subject to the Westminster system of separation of powers, which means the parliaments or courts can clip his wings and stop his tyranny. As he has the numbers and Parliament is not sitting, it's useless to try a no-confidence motion against Andrews, which we found out the other week. So we're left with the judiciary and the court. Spread this across all social media. Being awake and informed will set you free. With the legal illusion of fines swept away, so is lockdown. We decide when the lockdown ends, not Daniel Andrews. The police will run out of ink in their pens writing fines if we don't cooperate. It was for this reason that Daniel Andrews wanted detention powers in his omnibus bill. He feared someone would write a post like this and wake up Victoria. So please, if you are out there and you are still questioning what you should or shouldn't do purely based on your concern about getting a fine, let that be the furthest thing from your mind. Okay, these fines will never see the light of day in court. We have already had many people very, very successfully challenge, okay, these COVID-related fines using that Aussie speeding fines 3-step process, okay, and using the wealth of constitutional arguments that we include in our books, okay. These fines are already getting withdrawn. They're already getting dropped, okay. So add to those processes the information that we've covered in these recent videos and you've got a slam dunk case, Okay, go and watch those videos again on our YouTube channel, on our BitChute channel. Okay, now the other thing, if you missed Thursday night's video, please go and watch it. I showed you the article that confirms that 95% of COVID-related fines have not been paid. This is fantastic. This is how we bring an end to the system. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there for tonight. Okay, as we head into another week of lockdowns, continued lockdowns in Melbourne, remember these lockdowns end when everyone stands up and says enough is enough. We will no longer be dictated to. Okay, sure, they can post 10 police outside one business that chooses to open up like they did with the hairdressing salon in Melbourne, but they can't post police outside of every business if they all decide to open up. Okay, so please keep that in mind. Okay, you decide when you are free, not Dan Andrews. So as always, I urge you all, get informed, get fired up, and get proactive. Of course, the best way to do that is through all the free information on our website or all the detailed information in these 3 books, which of course you can get as a combo pack. There's a link in the description. Save yourself a little bit of money and grab those. And I do hope that despite these continued restrictions, you do all have a safe and enjoyable week. I look forward to speaking to you all on Tuesday night on our radio show. We will be speaking live to Darren and Daryl again, and we will hopefully be giving everyone an update on that all-important High Court case. Thanks, and I'll talk to you then.